Welcome to the Walled Garden Podcast. Here we nourish the gardens of our minds, one meaningful conversation at a time. If you'd like to find out more, go to thewalledgarden.com. Thanks for joining us. Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the Walled Garden Podcast. Today, I've got a really special guest for you, somebody who I only met recently, but the journey between our meeting and now has been absolutely wild. He's a profound teacher. He's a person whose spiritual strength and understanding really is abundantly clear, and his poetic genius as well. And he's somebody who I've just loved getting to know more over the past few weeks. And this is the first opportunity where we kind of said, okay, finally, let's do this. Let's get you on the show. Let's have a conversation. And so we literally just recorded the conversation minutes before I've started recording this intro. And so here we are. I'm going to read you just a little bit of information about Rocco, direct from himself. So this will give you a bit of a better idea of who he is. And then I'll just dive straight into the conversation because I do end up giving a little bit of an intro in there nonetheless. So Rocco Jarman is a philosopher, poet, and mystic with a deep understanding of hermeneutics and psychology, whose game-changing work in mindfulness modalities, psychological self-repair, inner child work, consciousness, and the nature of reality form the core of popular courses and programs aimed at self-discovery and psychological self-repair. And his command of poetry and archetypal language make him one of the most impressive thinkers and teachers in the present moment. He is the creator and host of the Eyes Wide Open Life podcast, and he's also a spiritual teacher and mentor of a new way called simply The Way. He's also a mindfulness coach, teaching new modalities of meditation, emotional intelligence and competency, inner child healing, conscious relationship and life mastery as a part of the Effective Alchemy program. And just before I dive into the conversation, you'll hear at the very end of the episode that Rocco puts an invitation out there for all of you to attend an event that he has coming up. And it's a Q&A with Rocco Jarman and Sarah Alcalde on topics like your purpose, your karma, quantum consciousness, and the nature of reality. It's going to be a very interesting event. And I'm sure that once you have listened to this conversation with Rocco, you're going to be interested in going along to that. And so we can actually give you a discount code if you would like to attend that. And the discount code is Walled Garden, one word. And I'll put the link to Rocco's website, which is eyeswideopenlife.org. And if you just go to that link, you can find the event there. It's on the front page. And then you can use that discount code to get 20% off when you purchase your ticket. But nonetheless, with that said, he is going to mention it again at the end of the episode, but I really just want you to dive into this conversation and enjoy this man who really has spent much of his life trying to seek answers to truly profound questions. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Rocco Jarman. Rocco is somebody who, you're somebody who I came on your show to promote The Poet and the Sage. And before, this is all obvious to you, but for everybody's listening, before I went on your show, you sent me some poetry that you'd written or an episode from your podcast and said, listen to this so that you have a bit of an idea of who I am, and then we'll have somewhere to start when we have the conversation. As soon as I started listening to your poetry, I was like, this is weird. The way that I describe it is it sounded as though you were drinking from the same fountain that I was drinking from in terms of our creative output, you might say. And so that excited me. I was like, great, this is going to be a great conversation. And as soon as we started talking, I knew that there was that we were going to continue to develop our relationship, because it was one of those moments. I've had it with a few people. Sharon LaBelle is another one of those people who, as soon as I started talking to her, I was like, this is a person. This is, we're linked in some way, many ways. And so obviously what's happened after that is I've just latched onto you, I don't know, like a barnacle to a rock. And here we are, many weeks later after that initial conversation, and we've had so many conversations since then, but it's been an absolute pleasure so far. So far as in until it's not. But but yeah, Rocco, just introduce yourself for everybody who's listening, and maybe we can go from there.
Yeah, that's a lovely summary of exactly what happened. Thanks. Look, first of all, it's lovely to be here. So I really appreciate the invite and the opportunity to unpack this in a more digestible way for your listeners. The thing is, you say you've latched on to me. I've been inhaling and preparing these things as a public service for a long time on how to articulate the truth about the universe, how to reintroduce a mutually respectful love affair between science and mysticism again. And the only thing I'm really short of at the moment is really focused, sincere students, people who are interested in understanding, where that the curiosity far eclipses any reticence or anything that stops them from moving forward. And you're exactly such a person. You're a consummate student of life. You just have such a huge amount of enthusiasm for understanding and for getting. I mean, I often say the thing that you want to be armed with is this principle of wanting to be wrong not a moment longer than you need to. You know, there's no right ways or only ways, but there surely have to be better or worse ways of getting to answers. And you epitomize this sincere hunger to be chasing the better way wherever you find it. You don't have rules about where you expect to encounter it, and it's very refreshing. It's easy to work with.
Appreciate that. I mean, there's a big difference I see between perhaps what the public perception it may be, or even your perception of me, and how I feel about myself in regards to what you just said. Because I mean, on the one hand, yeah, I am kind of embarking on this mission. What happened in the podcast really is I started out exploring Stoicism, which I still am very much a student and I hope a practitioner of.
Advocate of.
But then what that eventually turned into was, I think if you study Stoicism long enough, you start to realize, okay, there's some core messages here. One of those is find truth, find wisdom wherever you can find it. Doesn't matter where you, if it's truth, it's truth. If it's wisdom, it's wisdom. If it's good, it's good. So go out and find those things. And that kind of means that you have to, in a way, detach yourself from the dogmatic and enter the world, fall into that pool of what the hell is truth and what the hell is wisdom and knowledge and understanding. And I fail so often at that pursuit. And
it's supposed to be one of failure.
Yes, yeah. But I think that to that point, this is why when I find somebody like you or like Sharon or like Kai or these great philosophers and teachers who were getting involved in the Walled Garden even, I do latch on to them because I know that they know more than I do. And maybe if I can swim in that pool with those players, I mean, maybe that'll rub off on me a little bit. And so far that seems to be working somewhat well. But that's why we're here. I'm so glad to have you here, Rocco.
No, that's what makes it a pleasure. That is exactly that stance is what makes it a pleasure. Look, you asked me to provide a sort of my version of an introduction of myself.
Yeah,
extremely hard to categorize at the moment. So I'll take a leaf out of your book. I'll explain it in terms of what I'm doing.
Sure.
So the primary focus of my life at the moment is developing a body of philosophy which falls under the rubric of a working hypothesis. So I'm not a scientist, but I like to honor and respect the the prudence of the scientific method, which is exactly what we spoke about a second ago. I don't know, but I'm going to be brave enough to pretend that this is true for a moment. And I'm going to not just wear it like a hat, but I'm actually going to really commit to the look so that I can see how this belief may or may not change or offer a different perspective. And if there's something valuable to be found here, then I can devise experiments, tests, analysis, etc. And in much the same way, I don't believe any different approach needs to be taken to mysticism. I think one of religion's mistakes maybe was to say, yes, no, it's okay that science, you never say this is the ultimate truth. You say this is as much as we know for now, and tomorrow we might learn different, and then we'll enhance our understanding. I think our flaw has been to treat mysticism as if it ought to be permanently indelible forever. What we're trying to look at fundamentally is the eternal. And the lenses that we have, the trusty lenses, have been mysticism and science. And they're both trying to look through different windows into the same room. And therefore, they both have to have the sense about them that as we change, as times change, as complexity in the world changes, our calibration of our lenses, our means of peering through those windows needs to change with it. And they need moderation, update, revision, challenge. There should be no holy cows. And I think one of our flaws was to consign the mystical download, spiritual download, and say, no, we're chiseling this into stone. Now it has to be like this forever, and thou shalt always do this. And I think this is where it lost its like a clawhold in reality. And so what I'm doing primarily is trying to put out a body of work that can merge the two of them in an elegant, compelling way, where I don't have to resort to spiritual junk food or pseudoscience, but poking a bit of overdue critique at the hippie community, at the spiritual community, at the academic community. You know, academia have their own sins to answer for. There's pros and cons there with academia. You know, the sin of academia, for example, has been to hold on to the horse of deeper understanding, holding that horse to ransom for the shoes and bridle of specialization. And it's manifested in an unhelpful side effect of this sort of gatekeeping of validation of innovation, or gatekeeping of discovery from behind this badge of protection. And we've yet again yielded our liberty in the service of safety. And what I'm suggesting with my core philosophy is that there are ways for the entire individuals and the entire human species to evolve proactively instead of reactively, and do that by challenging some old ideas and bringing on board new ones, and trying to figure out from our past legacies of philosophy, psychology, spiritualism, religion, whatever it is that is worth retaining. And here's the wrapper: if you love a man, accept him. If you love an idea, fix it. So I'm trying to fix a lot of ideas that are being interpreted shit at the moment, package them in a digestible, practicable philosophy that answers these questions in a compelling, sensible way, and making it available to people in places they can reach it. So I don't know what you call that. I suppose philosopher is a term for that, but as you and I have encountered recently, you can have a philosopher who does philosophy just for the sake of it, just for the academic enjoyment, like they would play chess.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely pursuing philosophy with an agenda to give the human race a chance at walking itself back from a moment or a ledge of self-destruction that we one day might not be able to walk ourselves back from.
Mm.
So, and then all the work that goes with that. So, I mean, I'm a 47-year-old man living in Western Australia, remarried, the product of a brutal divorce, and just littered with loss and trauma and grief. Started a new little family again, which itself takes a lot of courage. been working 25 plus years in corporate, so I have that whole vault of experience. But I really identify as a poet, I identify as a philosopher, and I identify as a teacher, and I identify as a mystic. And the areas worth expressing of how that is, or the areas worth discussing is how that's expressing itself at the moment, which, as you and I both know, is something that is shifting and changing quite regularly. So, yeah, so that was quite a mouthful, but that's it.
No, well, I love it. And I appreciate you sharing all that. And I want to touch on this core element of your own mission, which is bringing mysticism and science together, or trying to make sense of them both, which, many great philosophers in history throughout the past few hundred years have tried to do, and it's now, you might say it's vital that we learn how to do that. And you said something on a podcast recently which so struck me. It was something along the lines of, people who say that science is messed up or that mysticism is messed up. They're not actually speaking from a place. That's not necessarily the truth. They're reacting to bad science or bad mysticism.
Right.
And
so the way I framed
I've
it
done
was
that multiple times before, because I have looked at bad science and be like, well, it's just scientism. And, I've been reactive in my approach to that sort of stuff. But I wonder if you could touch on that for a moment.
Yeah, sure. So the way that I'm throwing it out there is under a few sort of axiomatic statements or premises. The first axiomatic statement is that if the way, I'm talking about the archetypal way, in other words, the path that we're trying to follow, if the way is not about seeking better ways, it is not the way. If something isn't got in it the spirit of willingness to adapt, moderate, change, to encounter reality as reality is unfolding, it will by definition become outdated, and it's convenient. Human beings create systems to solve everything. For a while, that was the best game in town. Systems are designed to last. They're not designed to change. And so as a result, a system will fail when its inputs exceed its throughput. And what we have now are a bunch of systems which were designed in simpler times for a simpler mindset, and they're breaking. They're no longer fit for purpose, but our habit is to hold on to them and try keep re-engineering them. Elon Musk is in the news a lot at the moment, and one of his most amusing quotes is the dumbest thing a smart engineer can do is attempt to solve a problem that shouldn't exist in the first place. And we have these broken systems that are outdated, and instead of finding the courage to abandon them or step over the velvet rope of probity and prudence and what's permissible and allowed, we need to have the kind of courage to break these things down in the service of finding better answers. So the quote that you were mentioning, it goes something like, people that say, I don't believe in science, or I don't trust science, they don't really mean they don't trust science. They really mean they don't trust people, or they don't trust incentives. So every time you climb on an airplane, every time you put a bowl of soup in a microwave to warm it up, every time you get anesthetic at the dentist, I can guarantee you, assuredly, if you follow a GPS to get to your destination on time, you trust science. You absolutely trust science. And what's happening is you think to yourself, I don't trust science, or I don't trust spirituality and mysticism. And in fact, what you're actually disclosing is you don't trust the way you've seen it practiced. You've only maybe seen bad examples of it. And there are plenty of bad examples. And one of the core illness underneath both modalities is misaligned incentives. We have, and this now gets back to our systems, which systems drove these incentives? It was political control. It was our form of trying to manage very large social networks of people and trying to govern information and govern laws and govern things to make sure we didn't sully them or break them. So I understand the original intention, but we set these systems to charge in the beginning, and then we sort of step back unconsciously. And then when unconscious outcomes invariably manifest, then we're sitting here quite surprised, and we don't know where to turn the finger of scrutiny to say what's wrong. And so we're in a phase of human conscious evolution at the moment where we are drawn to polarities and dichotomies. And this is the gift and the curse of tribalism. Tribalism says my in-group knows the answer, your out-group is the threat, and it very easily apportions all the responsibility of disruption, of lack of cohesion, of antagonism to the other side. Now, the same thing happens now with science and mysticism. It's just the most natural thing on the world to choose a camp and then shit sling on the other side. But if we're ever going to transcend the complexity of the present moment, it's not going to be helping one side win. And that is including bicameral politics, that includes partisanship or false dichotomies on any context. It is this willingness, the heart of daring leadership, to hold a paradox, both sides, and sit with the discomfort and you resolve that discomfort internally. And that exercise is the alchemy of understanding that can be transmuted in the crucible of every single person's willingness or courage to hold uncomfortable paradoxes and look at what's true and look at what isn't, in the face of what's changing, not the face of what we've been told.
How do you recognize when you are successfully holding that paradox? Or is there a point where it's successful?
It's more of a heuristic than a binary outcome. So the success lies in, so there's a couple of, I suppose let's begin with questions. Questions are our intention to understand more about the world. Sometimes they're from a selfish perspective, so we can ease our suffering, or we can have more and service our needs. And sometimes it's just for the sheer pleasure of scratching the itch of curiosity. Low-hanging fruit kind of questions, they tend to be these sort of like epistemological, ontological dead ends. You have a question, there's an answer, it's the end of it, and you move on. They're great. And then you have the different kind of question, the question that invariably just raises more questions. Now, when that happens, the human intuition is towards laziness, and that's because of our evolutionary psychological programming. We are programmed to conserve energy, to choose the easy route. It's prudent to do that. And so when we're looking at a question that just raises more questions, there is a poor intuition that tells us we're going the wrong way. So let's say this whole metaphor is a maze or a labyrinth. We have it in our heads that we want to take a corner and ta-da, there's the exit. And then we take a corner and there's just more options. And we take a corner and there's just more options. It is in fact a good sign. It means you're in the right direction because you are exploring the unknown. This is a la Jordan Peterson's, leave the safety of the village where there is order and go out into the realm of chaos where there is disorder and darkness. Those are metaphors for unordered information and understanding, and a lack of the light of understanding and consciousness shone on something. And so then somebody needs to undergo an ordeal, do the transmutation in themselves. They need to resolve the paradox and find the truth, because there's always a third transcendent perspective. Always. There is always a third transcendent perspective, a perspective by which one can look at a conundrum, especially that's devolved into a dichotomy, and look over the top of it and resolve it and say, I understand. I understand in what context team A is correct, and I understand in what context team B is correct. What they're both missing is this paradigm, perhaps of time or of scale or of cyclic nature, or of polarity, or of something. So I suppose the answer to your question is, if you're encountering more and better and other interesting questions, the answer is you're on the right track. There is an extreme to that, which is the absolute chaos principle. And one definition of chaos is the presenting of urgent questions at a rate for which answers cannot be found. So if you can think of taking a human being psychologically and submitting them not just to a forest fire that's coming, or just to a thunderstorm, or just to a cyclone, or just to an earthquake, imagine those things happening at once. The human psychology looks out at a problem like that and starts asking questions. What's the best way to get out? What's the best form of survival? But when the conundrums that are coming at you are too thick and too fast, this is the experience of chaos, because there's a rising of questions in a vastly exaggerated rate, more than a normal human consciousness can pass reasonably in a short space of time. And this is the situation we have engineered in the 21st century. We can call it noise, but it's a self-propagated chaos. We have a world of such complexity in terms of social discourse, social media, attention capture, disruption, distraction, that the questions about how to live a good life, how to live a sane life, how to live a morally astute life, a skillful life, even in every single area of human interaction, this becomes an impossible question to pursue now, because of all the unconsciously arrived at complexity that hampers the metaphor of stepping through that labyrinth. So it has a negative extreme as well, which we've created for ourselves here.
Yeah, I think that's pretty clear as well. And I think something that you said there just really resonates with me, which is this experience of you start asking perhaps the right kinds of questions, and what inevitably happens is there's a massive expansion. And I think that I find this almost every day. I mean, if, studying something like divinity.
Welcome to the path. Yes.
Yeah, it's like even in a path of studying divinity, I go in there and it's as if there's this path being laid out with his kind of, there's you might say the dogmatic element to it, which is here's the Bible, here's the kind of way that we're now I think they do a pretty good job of getting you to question how you're looking at something like this, the sacred text of the Bible. But nonetheless, I'm constantly finding that I am wholly insufficient to answer any of the questions that I've begun to even scratch to find an answer. And I think that it's fun, and it's annoying, and it's great. But
it's wonderful. It truly is wonderful.
Yeah.
The conundrum that meets the seeker is where am I going to get all my thread from to weave with? But as you know, as soon as you begin weaving, the divine provides the thread, firstly. And secondly, what pattern shall I weave? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Follow your heart. Whatever interests you the most, you actually get to want. You get to feel good about scratching your own selfish itches, because you will find that the better expression of the human soul and the human psyche is actually beautifully and perfectly aligned with natural law and with the universe and with being. We just have a few mind viruses. But remember, the thing that will break these mind viruses is better understanding. And we come to better understanding through this metaphorical willingness to subject ourselves to the maze, the labyrinth, so that we can get through the labyrinth to get to the garden. You'll notice your motif of the walled garden is this beautiful hermetic as above, so below expression of the fractal nature, really, of the manifestation and the different orders of cosms that spring out from the unity. And there's two mandates in the unity. The one is generation, and the second is variation. And that's literally what the tree is a symbol of, these branches and bifurcation points. But around that motif of the walled garden is this beautiful Greek symbol of it's not a linear, straightforward wall. There's a maze component to that wall. There's a puzzle component to it. There's which both keeps the mystery safe, but makes the prize worthwhile. I mean, it's poetically beautiful, really. Yeah.
And this is one of the weirdest things I think about the path that I'm going on, Rocco. And you know this probably more than most people. It's like when I was creating that logo, I pulled a little piece that I drew for the poet and the sage, which is the tree coming out in the middle. Now, the poet and the sage was that kind of initial chaotic outburst of creative genius, you might say, within me. And I'm using that word because you've taught me that there's nothing wrong with recognizing that you have a spark of creative genius within you and actually pointing it out. And I mean that.
Well, you are the spark of creative genius. Everybody has to hold their corner of this game together, and that's what genius is. It's doing that with no shame. Yeah.
What I keep on finding is that I create these things and then months later I figure out what they mean or what they are.
Yes.
And what you just articulated about the logo of the walled garden is very interesting, because I took that initial chaotic tree and then I put a wall around it. Yes. You know, and that's the walled garden logo. And you said something about interest earlier, and I wanted to touch on this because I had this kind of thought recently that our interests are perhaps the truest part about us, in terms of you cannot argue with your interests. You're either interested in something or not. And in that way, I think one of my biggest challenges, Rocco, is when I'm asking questions, when I'm figuring out where I should look for answers, I know where my interest is pulling me, but I'm constantly attached to the previous place that I was seeking that knowledge. I'm like, well, no, I have to finish seeking here before I can move to here. But it sounds like what you're saying is like really trust that interest in where it's taking you and get on board that train and be glad to take that ride.
That is perfectly accurate, because a few things. There's a famous Zen koan called "Not knowing is most intimate." Most people don't understand
what most it means. Intimate?
Yes, not knowing is most intimate. Mm. What we're trying to connect with, the truth, sanity, enlightenment, transcendence. It doesn't really matter what word you find less or more comfortable or apt. It is something ineffable, sacred, for example. The word sacred does not need to have anything to do with shared ideas of God or spirituality or any other kind of whimsy. It's simply the answered wish to find something deep, foundational, and beautiful about this universe, and very specifically our very private sense of both gratitude and belonging and awe that we encounter when we make that discovery. Now, that being said, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for the sacred in marital union. We're looking for the sacred in community. And we're looking for the sacred in the universe. We're looking for the sacred in everything. And it's not hiding in one place. It's hiding everywhere. And that being said, when you're chasing the sacred, you are wired a certain way. You are calibrated from a quantum consciousness perspective, from an intentionality perspective. There is a signature of intentionality that you signed up for when you joined this life. And there's room for randomness and move and change and all the rest of it. But within that packet of experience, within that walled garden of experience, it's a playground. And you can do yourself no harm by fully trusting your intuitions. Now, there's two aspects to us. The one is this chasing and pursuing, and the other one is receiving and accepting. Being and becoming, we call it. Actualization and integration. And it's neither one nor the other. It has to be both. It has to be both. But part of this modality is the receiving. And the way to receive is not to grasp like a child. As a child grasps, they are intuiting the weight, the shape, the distance, the articulation of the surface that they need to make contact with, reach, and pick up. There's a lot of calculations happening there. And if any of those calculations are wrong, when we grasp with the hand of the mind, we are trying to preempt what the answer or the truth must look like, and it evades us. And so you're better off sitting calmly with your hands open in your lap, metaphorically speaking, like a Zen monk, and letting the truth come to you, because if the intention is in your heart, the answer will come. And so often I find people saying, I'm looking desperately for an answer, and then a distraction is coming, a habit is distracting them in their life, or a pattern keeps playing out, or they keep getting this song playing in their mind, and they interpret these things as distractions. And these things are, in fact, the little replicas of muses and inspiration that will lead them exactly like the golden bird in the dark forest, exactly to the glade of understanding. And how many times have you let yourself play and meander, and in your suspicion that you are wandering away from the path, that you are not following this path of virtue and duty and being the dutiful son, seeking the first answer, the grail of the first answer. This whole concept of the bell and the blackbird is the truth of what we're seeking is not hiding in one place. It's hiding in whenever you're following your heart, you're walking the path towards it, invariably. And that is the point of actualization. And we live with a kind of FOMO, of fear, that says, I might suffer regret. If I do this, I'm missing the opportunity to do that. There is a million other that's. Look at that motif of the walled garden. Those branches stretch off in every single conceivable direction. The arc of evolution for a human soul and for the collective soul is not just this beautiful upward arc. Nature doesn't evolve upward. It evolves indiscriminately in every single direction. And for certain souls, the area of interest is upward towards heaven. But for other souls, it's perfectly legitimate to just explore any direction, anywhere you want, snakes and ladders. There's no place you can stand inside this mix that's not the work of God. So if the destination is experience, all ways lead home.
That's so beautifully put.
Yeah.
Man, I appreciate that so much. And I think that it's the advice. Man, I need to just listen to that on repeat. Whenever, because everything that you're explaining there, I've felt those feelings. Oh, is this a distraction? But I also recognize, I think a lot of people out there will recognize this, that when you have followed those intuitions, really, really good things come about. And I think that part of it, and maybe you could talk to this, is well, actually, just give me 1 second here. Sorry, I have to plug my computer in, otherwise it's going to die. Part of the difficulty is that we always have to balance, as you've talked about with me many times, the pragmatic element with the adventure seeking element, and there has to be that
tension.
Yeah, that tension on that path. And I wonder if you might speak a little bit to that tension,
Sure.
How you would balance that.
Sure. So there is a compass that you use. It's a decision-making compass. Every time you get to this fork in the road, decision-making point, where you have to say, well, do I keep ambling down this path of intuitive inquiry, or do I stick to my goal, my original focus, my task? Both are fine. What matters is the place that you make that call from. If you are making the call ever from a place of fear, if ever it is fear-based thinking, if it is fear of missing out, if it is fear of wasting time, if it is Fear-based, it belongs to this, it is the family of chaos. And I don't mean chaos as in the building blocks of creation here. I mean chaos is in the thing that's breaking the good things apart as well. And when you do things from fear or fear-based thinking, the result will always be more fear-based outcomes. Non-being generates non-being. A crack wants to belong to every other crack. Fear-based is closing down, moving away, restricting. Love is opening up, moving towards. It is curiosity. It is tolerance. It is valuing potential minor bump or pain in the service of getting the itch of curiosity scratched. The answer is twofold. First of all, this compass, love over fear. And it's not romantic love we're talking about. It's this principle of expansion of consciousness, expansion of understanding, expansion of being in the world, expansion of your container of who and what you're compassionate and generous towards, so that you can become one of the worthy stewards of the garden, of your own body, of your own garden, of whomever happens to fall in the rubric of your container of love, support, leadership, etc. That's the one way. It's this compass of love versus fear. Fear-based thinking is amygdala hijack. It's when our lowest of our Maslowian needs are compromised in some way, and our consciousness is not expanded, it's contracted just to the amount that the animal in us, the animal part of our psychology, has to navigate through the world and keep getting its dopamine hits. The other thing is why I use the word understanding all the time with a capital U is it's no good just being good-hearted and bumbling through the world. We want to actually understand more so that our predictive model, our picture of the world, our understanding of natural law and how to harmonize with it can expand as well. And what we need to do sometimes is the exercise is one of discernment. I've got these little sayings that I say to you. I say, fear is not danger, pain is not injury, and discomfort is not unbearable. Our confusion around those things, our treating pain as if it's an injury, is exactly what gave rise to much dysfunction in public discourse around social justice. Our treating fear like danger is what makes us make bad decisions in life. We trade our liberty for our safety. Our dysfunctions publicly, public discourse, socially, etc., even in relationships, are very often due to this misunderstanding of the difference between fear and danger. And similarly with discomfort. It couldn't have been comfortable to publish your first book and to start saying those things, but it was a lie of the ego that it was going to undo you in some way. And when we can start discerning in every moment, am I doing this from love? Am I doing this from fear? What would love look like right now? What would love look like right now? I don't mean what does romantic love look like. I mean, what does daring leadership and courage in this moment look like? And if love doesn't look like leadership, it's not real love. And if leadership doesn't look like love, it's not real leadership. But the thing that helps us fine-tune that basic lens, which will never lie to us and never let us down, by the way, is discernment. And discernment you can't learn with foresight. You sometimes have to make the mistake. Everything has a cost and a gift, and sometimes the gift is a painful lesson. And you can't spit that out and chew only the bit that you want. It's both. That's life. It's the black dot in the white teardrop of the yin yang. It's you can't have the one without the other. And we make the mistake of making a choice, which we think is from love, but actually when we inspect it closely, it was actually fear. And then something bad happens, and then we suffer the illness of regret. And now we turn the scorn and the judgment of that bad decision onto ourselves, which manifests as guilt and shame. Guilt says, I did something wrong. Shame says, I am something wrong. But really, if you made the choice from love and you know that you made the choice from love, and you pick up this universal axiom of leadership, which is, as soon as I know better, I do better. What more could be asked of any human? Then what's the point of an overactive regret? What's the point of an overactive sense of self-doubt? What's the point of FOMO? What's the point of any of it? You literally get to follow your heart and you practice. You're not going to get perfect at it the first go, but that's why it's a practice. You get better at it over time and you start trusting yourself. And you bring along what Jung would have called the integrated shadow, and what we are now learning about integrated inner child. You bring those parts of the psyche along for the ride. You shine light into those dark places. You heal the wounds, and not just your own wounds. You then start healing the collective wounds as well.
This idea of if you know better, you'll do better. The thing that immediately pops out to me with that is how much courage it takes, or is going to take, for me to sometimes, or for anybody who's listening to this, to even just agree that that's the rule under which you're going to live your life. And okay, so let me put it like this.
Yeah, I know. Yep.
Once you agree that you're going to live like that, like we were talking yesterday, let's bring this theme back into it. You kind of have to say, fuck it. because at the end of the day, you cannot trust that everybody else is going to be on board with you in that principle, which means that you are going to constantly be facing people who are not going to understand what you're doing with your leadership.
Correct. 100%. That you have hit the nail on the head. And that is the context that I mean when I speak about self-permission. Peerlessness. You need to be prepared to be unloved by all in order to serve the all. You cannot get your permission or your sanctuary from the crowd if you want to lead them. And it's that simple. You cannot get your sanctuary from all of the little naysaying voices inside your own psyche if you want to lead them. If you want to actualize and become the person you want to be individually as a seeker, you cannot acquiesce to every single niggle and complaint that comes up from the wounded child, the neglected animal, the overactive protector, which becomes a critic, or the overactive judge, which becomes a victim. This is literally the quintessence of dysfunction in society at the moment. But if you want to be the leader of those things, you have to make a call, choose something, and find the conviction to stick with it even when it's difficult. Otherwise, it's not leadership. It's just convenience. Yeah. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Self-permission. Self-permission. If we wait for the permission of the crowd, we all remain small. Somebody has to go first. Somebody has to speak first. Somebody has to speak, act from the heart and do the difficult thing first. They don't have to do everything. They have to show the way. They have to lead the way. That's what leadership is. It's not rescuing everyone. It's vulnerability of showing the example first. That is done for other, not for self. That's it. Just that. Leadership is meaning it. Like not when it's easy, when it's hard as well. Because young people or people that need to follow leaders so they can undo the programming that they're stuck with. If there's something you cannot forgive yourself about, they're watching you and they believe you. And now they believe there is something to forgive, which means they project that on themselves and they hold themselves to this ridiculously high standard. If you think back, our ideas of good teachers or good adults or good parents were not the ones that never made mistakes. It's the ones that owned them. That we respected. Everyone respects that. And that's a decision, but it's not a decision that comes with this beautiful groundswell of endorsement from the crowd. The crowd is not their own best carer or their own best keeper. It's not. So, and this whole point about going first and doing something first is to lead the way. And it requires vulnerability, huge vulnerability, and it requires uncertainty. It's you, the one that sits with uncertainty and parses it.
Yeah, man. How did you what was the catalyst for you exploring these kinds of questions?
Trauma and grief. Trauma and grief. You know, we always need, you said something, you said, all we can do is follow our heart. Truly. We misunderstand motivation. We think motivation in like some sort of Spartan sense or some sort of sense of virtue. Like if you're good, you will go beyond yourself and you will be motivated to finish a task or to complete an action. That's a completely fucked up idea of motivation. What motivation actually is enthusiasm. I am motivated to sit and have a meal with my wife. I'm motivated to spend time with my daughter. I'm not motivated to fill in my tax return. But as soon as there's an incentive there, then I'm motivated. So when we connect with our truest wiring and our truest incentives and our authenticity, the thing that we want to do the most, we don't lack for motivation to do that. We sometimes have to exercise prudence so we don't do too much of it. But all of wisdom really is being motivated by prudence. That's what wisdom is. I'm motivated by prudence. So I'm discerning when to go against myself and when to trust myself. And that's the art of philosophia. It's how do I harness my motivation in alignment with the way the world actually works, so that I can get what I want and be of service at the same time. It's got to be possible. That's it. And when your heart is broken or breaking, or when you have such a huge amount of discomfort in your life, invariably what you're going to want to do without even trying is address the problem. But the way that you ask those questions matters, because the questions we dare ask define the kinds of answers we ever come to. And the question that I asked, the wish that I had, the intention that I had was to be well, truly, truly, truly well. So I was suffering from mental health. I was in a 12-year marriage that I realized in hindsight I never wanted to be in. I was not a good version of myself as a husband or a father. I was in a job that I absolutely hated, and our marriage was our family life was psychologically abusive. And I had all this academic learning on Gnosticism, Kabbalah, Hermetics, Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism. And it didn't matter, it didn't help. None of the academics helped. And I tried to apply everything, and I tried to understand, I tried to reason, but my understanding was small u understanding. My reason was lowercase r reason. And so one of the first things I discovered was discomfort is the cure for apathy. Discomfort is the cure for apathy. And the mounting discomfort eventually provides all the motivation we need to drop our bullshit and really go seek curiosity without the filters of narrative, story, bullshit, and safety. We go and we want the whole actual true answer, because there is something inside of us that is so exhausted from the beat up psychologically that we want genuine respite. And the only form of genuine respite is sanity. It's truth, it's perspective. It's a real engagement with the causality, the laws of cause and effect that govern this universe. Everything else was a child's story. And so my wish to be well, truly well, and I mean I made the definition very clear. I said, I want to love the guy that I saw in the mirror, truly love them. Because if it wasn't love, if it was tolerance or excuse, or that's a failure. And so part of that was, if you're going to truly love yourself or truly love anything, if you're not prepared to look at what it actually is, you don't love it, you love a projection of it that you keep in your mind. To be truly loved, one has to be truly seen, and therefore one has to be truly vulnerable. And if anybody sticks around and chooses that, then they choose you. And if they don't, and you're putting a veneer or a mask on, you are not yourself and you are not loved. So I call it the anvil. I put myself on the anvil again and again and again and again in various ways, through jiu-jitsu, through psychological self-repair, through psychedelic ceremony, through many modalities, always with the same goal: hammer the bullshit out the way regardless of the cost. Because nothing can be worth a life of not loving yourself and not trusting yourself. Beautifully, what happens is the healing has, everything's got a cost and a gift. And sometimes you've already paid the cost and now you just get to reap the gifts. But even that place of coming to inheriting your understanding, it comes with, you thought you'd paid the price. You thought you'd looked at things. You thought you had faced things. Aha. Those series of dark nights of the soul, and the thing that I call the dark winter of the soul, where nothing in the universe confirms your path. You have to choose your path in the absolute absence of confirmation. And that's the definition of faith. You have to just believe and say, when I get to the end of this journey, fuck it. If I'm going to be judged for anything, I'm going to be judged for the contents of my heart. And this is what's truly in my heart. And that's why it's so easy to lead people now and to teach. And I always know what needs to happen in the present moment, because I simply ask myself, what would I want? What would I want if I was the weak person, if I was disenfranchised, if I was marginalized, if I was cheated in this way, if I was the person on the left, if I was the person in the right, if I was the wife in this couple, if I was the husband, if I was the child? Put yourself in their shoes. Objective subjectivity. What would I truly feel? And when you can make contact with that, you don't need knowledge, you don't need high wisdom. All you need is a human heart. That's all you need. And the clarity that comes with that, the beautiful thing is, very quickly, it stopped being about my healing and my growth. Very quickly, that stopped. Very, very quickly, that was no longer the central focus of the project. It very quickly became one of, when you sit with this kind of perspective, the only sane response is, how can I help? Oh my God, how can I help? Why is nobody doing anything? And rushing off to try to do something is the act of a child. Finding out how to do it better, properly, in ways that it's not been done before, that became my work. And the gifts just flow. If you are receiving in order to give, you receive a lot.
Man, I really appreciate you sharing so much there. There's a theme that pops up in people who think profoundly about how they can help, like you say. I remember Stephen Jenkinson. Are you familiar with Stephen Jenkinson's work at all?
No. I think you may have mentioned it once to me, sorry.
Yeah. He said to me once, paraphrasing here, most people go out to try and solve the problem before they've even figured out what the problem is in the first place.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's disheartening once you realize that that's been most of your life. but
yes,
but nonetheless,
exactly.
there's a place that you arrive at there where you, like you're saying, there's just so much good stuff in what you just said there. How much time do you have?
If you give me 1 sec, I'll check.
Because we're about an hour in now. I can absolutely go for another half hour if you can.
No, sure. We've got time.
Let's do it.
Go.
I would like to read you a poem at one stage, and perhaps you could read something of yours.
Yes.
Do you mind if I read that to you now?
No, of course not.
Let me find this. So we're back, and what we learned in the break there is that I can't find this poem that I wanted to read to Rocco, so that's okay. This is yet another lesson from my part to continue to organize my files. But Rocco, would you like to share something?
Yeah, I thought there was 2 pieces, and again, there's never a perfect reason why one chooses different pieces. But I think, considering what we're talking about, this connection with the eternal and the ineffable that we're trying to make, I've got 2 pieces which kind of address that. The first one is called The Pilgrim, and in brackets, The Call. Here I am, a traveler, on my way to where I do not know, the child of 2 houses with no home. There exists in me the rains and traces of my past, holding me to nature and to a primal legacy, an unbroken line of existence that goes all the way back to the very beginning of the world. Forces which sustain me, drive me, and have sustained and driven all my ancestors to survive. The tools? Gifts given to keep my heart beating in my chest, to keep the fire burning in my belly, and to find a way for the seed of life in me to find its way through pain and fear and adversity to the next cycle of each day, each moon, each season, and each life. And in me also, the high window, my consciousness, the source of light by which I might come to see how it is I got here, how the caked mud on my feet was collected on the journey, winding back into the forgotten miles behind me, how I am held down by the great pull of the earth, and how it is both a blessing but quite inescapable, and with a faint realization that I cannot quite decide which I love more, the wish to surrender to the safety of it, or the prodigal longing to defy it. Because through that very window, there is the other great pull, the light of dawn waking in me, the promise of an infinite sunrise to which the lark of my soul sings, the light by which I may come to that vast and unmuddied ocean in me, the sublimely undulating silence, the stillness by which all is known, the stillness in which everything moves and all movement is held. The stillness is in me. It is me. I choose to remember. I choose to surrender.
I love that. I think this is it's so good to get you to read your poetry so that people can see that side of yourself as well. And the thing that I latched onto in that is this idea of the forgotten miles. It's so beautiful to contemplate how far we have traveled to be here now, doing whatever it is that any of us are doing. It's insane.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
And it goes right back to the beginning.
Yes, we don't realize the magnitude of the blessing that we enjoy. We don't realize the magnitude of that blessing, and we trivialize things like that. There's a beautiful quote by someone I'm going to be doing a live event with soon. Her name is Sarah Alcaldi. She calls herself the alchemist. You are who your ancestors sang about in their ceremonies. You are their revolutionary prayer. You are their sacred gift to the world. And we're at this nexus now of this long story that has played itself out through eons, through much suffering, great costs, but also great gifts, great gifts. We are standing on the threshold of an impossible moment. An impossible moment. We are so empowered right now as a species. The only thing that is stopping us is a shared intention and knowledge. And we know how to pursue knowledge. The one thing we need to remember is the merit of pooling our intention again. Our intentions have been subsumed, distorted. And that's your work and my work, really, is to help people realign the intentions of our institutions, etc., with natural law so that we can stop making everything so unwell. You know, Jiddu Krishnamurti, he said it so beautifully. He said, it is not a sign of poor health to be well-adjusted in a profoundly sick society. And so for anybody who comes to me, I do client work as well, and they say, you know, I'm really struggling with this and I'm struggling with that. I said, but of course you are. Of course. To find me a sane human being that doesn't struggle with this right now. There would be something far more concerning if this was not affecting you, because we are in a profoundly sick arc of our evolution. We are going through and have created for ourselves great discomfort, which will be the cure for our great apathy. And it will propel us forward, yeah.
The major challenge in what you're talking about there is how do we even begin to think about how to get humanity united under a common umbrella of intention? It's I mean, you could probably talk to your ideas about the heart of daring leadership in this respect, but it's the impossible challenge. I mean, there was a point where Christianity was that umbrella for Western culture,
for the West.
You know?
Yeah.
And at the moment we're seeing you know, it's like acid raining on the umbrella. Now it's just like that acid's coming through to everybody else underneath it. You know, and we cannot it's probably a terrible analogy, but
no, I understand it.
Yeah,
I understand it. Look, for Christianity to take a meaningful role, it is going to have to remake itself. There is so much poison in the veins now. There is so many poor ideas that are smuggled in with the good. The multiple translations, the multiple expressions, any truth that was there has been distorted. But the belief system, even though it's got so many proliferations and versions, the core still is resistant to moderation and amendment. And that is a kind of apathy for which the only cure is discomfort. And this one galvanizing thing that will drive everybody is our root to nature. We don't want to be here stuck in this bad place forever. But we cannot use the same level of thinking and that the people who led us here used when they got us here. We have to dance our way out of the dance now. We have to play ourselves out of the game. And the ultimate price will come on the table soon. Existential survival. Existential survival. And we will find sooner or later all that people were waiting for was a big enough storm. And the storm will arrive. It's mounting now. In many ways, we've already tested or spilled a few drops over the outdated levees that form our social norms. You know, it's touch and go right now. It really is. You know, somebody said to me, oh, you know, the sky's always been falling. Sure. What did we think was going to happen with all of that stored momentum? It's good to give.
Whenever I hear somebody say something like that, I always point back to Jung, who rightfully pointed out that if humanity doesn't match their technological advancements with an equal or greater amount of moral wisdom, we're going to inevitably end up just wiping each other out completely.
That's it.
And when people say something like that, you might have been able to say that before nuclear weapons, or before many of the technologies that we have, like even like social media. You might have been able to say stuff like that, but at a point.
Yeah.
But I don't think you can still say that, because
no.
the what is it? The effect of the sky falling now is not
the ability that chimps have to harm themselves is so much greater. Yeah. So we have democratized technology. So things that would take like a small, like a first world country's significant portion of their national budget to do over 10 years, university students can now do in a lab on a weekend. So nuclear fission, gene editing, printing viral chains, all these things with hugely destructive potential. We've democratized this technology, and it's the same as Moore's law, where every year the transistor gets smaller and cheaper. Technology has this nature to it where it becomes more accessible, more affordable, more democratized. There's a gentleman called Nick Bostrom. He has this thought experiment called the urn of invention. And his postulation is that you have this urn, URN, urn of invention. And out of the urn, you can dip your hand in. You can't look at what you're grabbing, but you can grab a black ball, a white ball, or a gray ball. And our society has been pulling out white ball and gray balls for up until now. And now we've developed a logical fallacy that says it's impossible to pull out a black ball. There's no, all innovation is upward. And all innovation is not upward. Ingenuity, much like evolution, doesn't have an upward arc only. It'll exploit every single available niche. And its time scale that which will judge success on is far, far, far beyond that of a human life or even a society. And all it takes is us pulling out a gray ball. So what are the white balls are things like shoelaces. What bad has ever come from shoelaces? No, it's fantastic. Internet's a gray ball. So lots of positive, but lots of negative. And sometimes you can say it justifies the costs. A black ball would be something that we take out when we get excited about doing it. A ratcheting effect takes place that we can never unwind from. And when the cumulative effect is one of existential demise, there's nothing that's in the universe that says that the next invention, which we pull out the rabbit's hat, doesn't going to have the power to compound unfavorably with other inventions or circumstances, which is going to cause us terrible harm. And not only are we on the brink of harming ourselves existentially, there are 1,000 things that could happen even if it wasn't our fault. And we still would lack the requisite ability to cooperate, coordinate, and communicate in the interest of survival, because we are so captured by this idea of tribalism and partisanship. And it's a evolutionary mind virus that it's run its course, and it's a feature that became a bug. Tribalism is this signal in us to band together with same and fear other. It seeks connection in the interests or the hopes for survival. But the way that we're expressing it from this fear-based state of non-being is something that is ensuring disconnection and selecting for disconnection with the absolute inevitable outcome of self-annihilation. So it's not working anymore. The answers which nature gave us are not working anymore. Now we have to resort to conscious choice, to sit and moderate for that. And as you say, yes, you could have said this a few years ago when the largest form of public harm was slander or a rifle. There is only so many people you can do harm to with a single tactical weapon. With some of the things at our disposal now, the way we can cause harm to ourselves and each other and the environment is astronomical. And we lack the discernment or the wisdom or the compassion to wield those things properly. So, as you said, we've got these Iron Age philosophies and ideas on mysticism and morality. We've got 21st century technology, and we've got this absolutely stunted, primitive sense of self-awareness. So it's a scary combination. Yeah,
it certainly is. What's the hope that you see?
Well, the mother has a plan. The father has a plan too. And the father's plan is the mother. The mother has a plan. At the end of the day, this is a natural arc that was always going to play out anyway. It didn't have to be so brutal and hectic or last for so long, but part of this story had to be told. Part of this experience had to be experienced. Part of the pendulum backswing of all this discord and dysfunction and suffering is unfortunately the necessary catalyst, which is exactly the pendulum backswing that's going to empower the forward swing. But cycles come to an end, Simon, and they ratchet. They clank one gear forward, and a new baseline is set, which is how nature keeps going. Built into it is this principle of continuation, not just generation, but continuation. And one of the fail safes there is tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, clank, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, clank. Every clank sets a new point beyond which it can't roll back. And there are pros and cons, there's positives and negatives, but at least life expressing itself in that medium, in that context, in that paradigm, it's a barometer needle that it won't slip below again. Now, the hope is that built into this universe is this principle of regeneration and continuation. The other principle is the only cure for apathy is discomfort. And eventually, regardless of the level of suffering we endure on a personal level, when enough of us get to the brink, then, and if people like you and I are speaking and giving people doors to walk through, avenues, gardens to rest in and find shelter in, ways to think about the world and connection and relationships and stewardship better and differently. If we increase our language and we start embracing new ideas, we have some incredible ideas available right now. What we're lacking is the conviction to try them. And that is a personal choice individuals can make. And we sometimes ask ourselves, I'm just one person, what can I do? If you process your generational trauma, if you make a choice to change the stance about the way that you move through the world, and that stance is a decision that says, not beyond me, I'm linking my arms with the other adults, and we're going to make sure it doesn't get past us, not on our watch. So you don't have to save everything and everyone. You can start with yourself, and it will be an incredibly worthy cause. Because from there on out, the positive impact that you have in the world around you and the ability that you now have to co-create as a worthy steward is elevated exactly where you need to be. And as I said, if you begin weaving, the divine will provide the thread. If you're coming from a place of heart and living a life of service, and I don't mean the service of martyrdom, because that's a child's idea. If you're living a life of service, of purpose, connecting with your purpose and making that the core focus of where you spend your time, your energy, your attention. If you're coming from love, you can do no harm. And there is great, great, great hope lying in front of us, great hope. We are incredibly, incredibly empowered right now.
You mentioned the kind of cyclical nature of the reality where we're all in. And I don't know if you specifically said these words, but the spirit of what you're saying seems to be, well, okay, we're about to have one of those clanks in the tick, 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 clank nature.
A coincident clank. In other words, there are small cycles within larger cycles. And the small one is ending, which is a child of a larger one, which is a child of a much larger one. And the endings are coinciding. And so there will be great discomfort and great suffering, but a great click forward. Yes.
Do you see how there could be a potential apathy that comes from even recognizing that there is just that cyclical nature to everything that we're seeing here. And well, if it's all just part of the plan, then do you know what I mean?
Yes. Yes, that old chestnut, which is this kind of fatalistic apathy that I can just go, oh, well, there's nothing I can do, so it's fine. Some people are wired like that. That's okay. But here's the challenge. Here's the challenge to that. If you're prepared to let me throw a challenge out there.
Well, this is good. This might be the point that we wrap things up with a good challenge.
I just want to read that last poem, and then I'll after this, and then I'll read the challenge. So we're sitting here with this concept that, yes, potentially this has been going on forever, and so what can I do? Why don't I just c'est la vie and let it all be? And it's my turn to find something quickly. Give me one sec.
Sure.
So that's fine if that's your chosen path. But to really understand the present moment, you need to think like a mother. And ask yourself something like, what do we want from a mother? We want nurture, we want care. And then we ask ourselves the question above that question, which is, well, who mothers the mother? If you were a mother and you saw all your children neglected, dominated, violated, and abused, what would you feel? You would feel sorrow for what is being endured. What you feel would be grief for what has been endured. It will be anger at the sense of injury and neglect that's still being perpetrated. It would be a license to be expressive about the injustice. It would be reactive. And that is what's happening in society and the world at the moment. And I do need to find this little piece because it's so key to your question. I actually wrote it last night. Let me just find this. The argument to everyone who's still hiding behind the statement, the sky has always been falling defense, or that it'll all work itself out in the end. Our literal mother, in other words, the thing that we depend on for life and nurturing, does not have the luxury of ignoring the suffering and focusing on this long-term inevitable outcome that will eventually come. So we can be negligent and have a chosen, what intransigence is a chosen apathy when it's not in your interest to understand something. And nature, our mother, doesn't have the luxury of ignoring the suffering because there is suffering happening right now for which we are complicit in the neglect and looking away. She's suffering right now, and we are harming her children. The suffering is pervasive, and it's not just human. And the definition of suffering is where you cannot ignore discomfort until later. It becomes unignorable. And all I would ask somebody to do is either truly connect with your purpose. You need to have the courage to play a more localized part. Not everyone needs to change the world on the same scale. You can maintain the world, you can maintain society, you can maintain the numbers which form this good critical mass, this gravity of just being aligned in harmony with the needs of the village, the garden, the community of life. That's noble and it's an essential service. And part of survival and continuation legitimately requiring and dependent on stable gravity to provide the core of this village. It's okay for you to just do your part. Find your part and be still about it. Don't be moved about it. Don't feel that you're not doing enough. But to do that, you have to have the courage to accept your nature and face who you actually are and what you actually want. Now, what you're saying to me is, what happens if somebody says, if I search my true self and I find out that I'm genuinely apathetic, I don't see this as my concern or my problem. I'm hiding behind this convenience that c'est la vie, it'll all just work itself out in the end, the Tao of not doing. And to some degree, some Stoics consider this kind of a chosen equanimity or indifference. I'm just letting it be. All I'm asking you to do is consider if you do want to somehow contribute towards a meaningful life, even if it's in the context of your own life, and your truest inclinations are to see to yourself your own interests that you now need to acknowledge are coming at the expense of others, might not be other humans, but it's other sentient beings. All I'm asking you, that person, is to acknowledge that the definition of a psychopathy is the condition of being maladapted for harmony or expansion. It is being maladapted towards being. It is an expression of non-being. And if you are not part of the solution, my friend, you are part of the problem. And that apathy is part of the problem. It's the failure of leadership. It's the stance that says, surely someone else is coming. Surely someone else will just mop this up. Surely we are the ones. The light will not return. We need to become the light. We are in an eclipse right now, looking every way for the signal of where dawn is going to come from. Which way are we going to choose to keep honoring the signal of life and find our way to tomorrow? And the light seems to lie in every direction, this false half light. Everything is dark, everything is black. And the light will not return because we need to become the light. So I know we're not going to get everybody, but there's going to be a lot of people that are going to hear that and their hearts will be moved.
Yeah, they'll get it.
Because all you have to ask yourself is, what would you want? What would you want if you were the disenfranchised, if you were the neglected, if you were the abused, if you were the violated, if you were the dominated? You would want the rest of humanity to put their arms together and say, not on our watch. And if you can say that that's what you want, then you already know in your heart what you should be doing. You need to find a way to contribute. And you and I are creating many, many, many ways for people to contribute.
That's beautiful, man. I was going to consider reading you something, but I'm going to do that after we jump off here because that's such a beautiful place to wrap this up. But I want to give you a chance, Rocco, to mention the event that's coming up that you'll be a part of and how people can go and find that and the discount that is available for our members.
Yeah, for sure. So can I read that? That last poem might actually be a bit long. We'll leave that for another time.
Okay.
What I'll do is I'll find the event. So the best way actually is just to go to my website. But let me tell you about the event first. So I have created I've birthed a series of online interactive events called Quorum Aletheia. Quorum is this concept of two or more people getting together with enough authority and insight to be able to make some assertions about the world or make some claims or start solving problems. And Aletheia is this hermetic concept of disclosure, which is similar to revelation. Revelation is passively received, whereas disclosure is actively sought. It's a relationship you get into with the universe. So that's the title. The real premise underneath these events are finding subject areas of great current interest where there is a tension that exists between science and mysticism and discussing them in a thoughtful, informed manner, and then fielding a bunch of questions and giving people the context to make sense of these. So the first one is on people, their purpose. What's my purpose? What is my karma? What must I accept and what can I challenge? What exactly does quantum consciousness mean? What's the actual nature of reality? And I'm joined on stage somewhere between the 18th or the 19th of May by a lady called Sarah Alcaldi, who really is one of the preeminent teachers on the planet at the moment. her insight into her realm of understanding is quite phenomenal, and she really bears listening to. She's got well over 600,000 followers on Instagram. Her YouTube videos are like TED Talks about these kind of things that we're talking about right now. Very, very detailed technical understanding of consciousness in a quantum context without drinking from the fountain of spiritual junk food or pseudoscience. Very, very erudite and informative YouTube channel with over 1 million downloads at this stage. So the reason why I said the date is both the 18th and 19th is we're spanning different time zones. Sarah's in California. I'm in Western Australia. So if you go to the booking page, you'll notice your local time and just pay attention to that. The best way to learn more about this is to go to my website, eyeswideopenlife.org. It's literally one of the first horizontal banners as you scroll down the page, Quorum Aletheia, latest event. If you click through there, there's details on both the hosts, the topics for the evening, the format, the ticket pricing, and a link to the Humanitics booking site. What else can I tell you? I think that's it, really.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that there is a what percentage discount did we say for World Garden listeners?
So
they can use a code.
Yes, I've created a discount code for your listeners, Simon. If you just give me 2 shakes of a lamb's tail, I'm going to log in.
That's a classic one. 2 shakes of a lamb's tail.
2 shakes of a lamb's tail.
Is that Australian or is that a South African saying?
I don't know, but it works wonderfully, and I've never anybody not like it. So discounts. So I have a 20% discount for your listeners. I'll send you the link. But basically, even if you go through to the Humanitics booking page, there will be an opportunity for you to put in a discount code, Walled Garden, one word. WALLEDGARDEN, Walled Garden, one word. 20% discount for your listeners, Simon.
Brilliant. Well, Rocco, yeah, thank you so much for that. Thanks for the discount. Thanks for sharing that event. And also just thank you for having this conversation on the show. I've been wanting to make this happen since we started talking. And I think that, this was just the perfect opportunity this week. And I think it'll be clear to everybody who listens to this exactly why I'm going to do everything within my power to continue to latch onto your mind like that barnacle on the rock, and to be in many ways guided by you and my own learning. That's the intuition, that's my interest that is pulling me along. So thank you, Rocco. I appreciate it.
Man, it's been my absolute pleasure. I thought maybe in passing or in closing, I'm going to sneak one last thing in here.
Let's go.
And it's got to do with greatness. In times of great need, weak men should step aside and let great men lead. In times of great need, weak men should step aside and let great men lead. The trouble is, weak men think all men are like them. And worse, only great men understand great need. If you want to know how to be a great man, look compassionately into the heart of suffering. If you want to know how to be the greatest of men, look with curiosity and reason into the cause of suffering.
You've been listening to the Walled Garden podcast. If you'd like to attend any of our free meetups and events, or if you'd like to get one-on-one mentoring with either Sharon LaBelle, Kai Whiting, or myself, just go to thewalledgarden.com. But for now, don't forget to nourish those gardens in your mind.